Welcome to this little world, where things aren't measured by size, but by meaning. In this video, we'll journey together through words, stars, and stories that speak to the heart before the mind. Whether you're a child searching for answers or a grown-up trying to remember, you're in the right place. Let the journey begin. To Leon Worth, I ask the indulgence of the children who may read this book for dedicating it to a grown-up. I have a serious reason. He is the best friend I have in the world. I have another reason. This grown-up understands everything, even books about children. I have a third reason. He lives in France, where he is hungry and cold. He needs cheering up. If all these reasons are not enough, I will dedicate the book to the child from whom this grown-up grew. All grown-ups were once children, although few of them remember it. And so I correct my dedication. Chapter 1. The Drawing That Changed Everything. The narrator begins by recalling a moment from his childhood, when he was 6 years old, and fascinated by a picture in a book about the jungle. It showed a boa constrictor swallowing its prey whole. Inspired, he drew his own version, what he called Drawing Number 1, a snake digesting an elephant. But when he showed it to grown-ups, they all thought it was just a picture of a hat. To help them understand, he made Drawing Number 2, showing the inside of the snake. Still, the adults didn't get it. Instead of encouraging his creativity, they told them to focus on more serious subjects, like geography and arithmetic. Disheartened, the narrator gave up drawing, and eventually became a pilot. Though geography turned out to be useful in his travels, he never stopped feeling disappointed by how unimaginative adults were. Whenever he met someone who seemed insightful, he would test them by showing Drawing Number 1. But they always saw a hat, not a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. So he learned to keep his thoughts to himself and talk about things adults preferred: golf, politics, neckties. The chapter ends with a quiet sadness. The narrator feels isolated, longing for someone who sees the world with the wonder and clarity of a child. Chapter 2. The Encounter in the Desert. After years of living in solitude, without anyone who truly understood him, the narrator finds himself in a life-threatening situation: a plane crash in the Sahara Desert, thousands of miles from any sign of civilization. No mechanic, no passengers, just him and his broken aircraft. His water supply could barely last a week, and death loomed close. On the first morning after the crash, he is startled awake by a strange little voice saying, "Please, draw me a sheep." Stunned, he looks around and sees a small boy standing before him, serious and composed. The child doesn't seem lost, tired, or afraid, despite being in the middle of a vast desert. The narrator, who had abandoned drawing since childhood, tries to explain that he doesn't know how to draw. But the boy insists. "That doesn't matter. Draw me a sheep." After several failed attempts, the narrator sketches a box and tells the boy the sheep is inside. To his surprise, the boy beams with joy. "That's exactly what I wanted." And so begins a unique bond between the narrator and this mysterious little prince, unlike anyone he had ever met. Chapter 3. Where the Little Prince Came From. The narrator tries to uncover the origin of the boy, but the little prince rarely answers directly. He asks many questions, but avoids answering the ones posed to him. When he sees the airplane, he asks, "Did you fall from the sky?" And when he learns the narrator is a pilot, he laughs sweetly and asks, "Which planet are you from?" At that moment, the narrator begins to suspect that the boy may have come from another world. He asks about the boy's home and the sheep, and the prince replies, "The box will be his house at night." When the narrator offers to give him a rope to tie the sheep during the day, the prince is shocked. Tie him? What a strange idea. The narrator explains that the sheep might wander off and get lost. But the prince laughs again. Where would he go? Then, with a touch of sadness, he adds, "Where I live, everything is so small. No one can go very far." Chapter 4. The Prince's Tiny Planet. The narrator discovers something remarkable. The little prince's planet is no bigger than a house. But this doesn't surprise him. He knows that beyond the great planets like Earth and Jupiter, there are countless tiny asteroids, so small they're barely visible through a telescope. These aren't given names, only numbers. He believes the prince came from one called asteroid B612, first spotted by a Turkish astronomer in 1909. Sadly, when the astronomer presented his findings, no one took him seriously because he wore traditional Turkish clothes. Grown-ups can be shallow like that. Years later, after a law forced everyone to wear European-style clothing, the astronomer repeated his presentation, this time dressed properly, and was finally believed. The narrator shares this story not because it matters to children, but because grown-ups need facts and figures to believe anything. If you tell them you've made a new friend, they won't ask what games he likes or what makes him laugh. They'll ask how old he is, how much he weighs, and how much money his father makes. To convince them the little prince is real, you must say, he came from asteroid B612. Then they'll nod and stop asking questions. But for those who truly understand life, numbers don't matter. The narrator wishes he could begin the story like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was a little prince who lived on a planet barely bigger than himself and who needed a sheep. He writes not to entertain, but to remember. 6 years have passed since the prince left, and forgetting a friend is a sorrow too deep to bear. Not everyone has had a friend, and if he forgets, he may become like the grown-ups, interested only in statistics. So he picks up his pencils again, even though he hasn't drawn since he was 6. He tries to capture the prince's likeness, though sometimes he draws him too tall, sometimes too short. He's unsure of the color of his clothes, but he tries, because remembering matters more than perfection. Chapter 5. The Threat of the Baobabs. As the days pass, the narrator learns more about the prince's planet, its size, its habits, and its dangers. The details come slowly, dropped casually in conversation. One day, the prince asks, "Is it true that sheep eat little bushes?" The narrator says yes. "Ah, I'm glad," the prince replies. Then he asks, "Do they also eat baobabs?" The narrator explains that baobabs aren't bushes, they're massive trees, as big as castles. Even a herd of elephants couldn't eat one. The prince laughs at the image. We'd have to stack the elephants on top of each other. But then he grows serious. Before they grow big, baobabs start out small, and that's the danger. On his planet, like all planets, there are good seeds and bad seeds. The bad ones, like baobabs, must be uprooted early before they take hold. If left alone, they grow monstrous, their roots splitting the planet apart. The prince explains that caring for his planet is a daily discipline. Just as one washes in the morning, one must also tend to the soil, pulling up baobabs before they disguise themselves as harmless rose bushes. He urges the narrator to draw this lesson for children. Sometimes it's okay to delay a task, but with baobabs, delay means disaster. He tells of a lazy man who ignored 3 tiny sprouts. The result was catastrophic. So the narrator draws the planet, even though he dislikes sounding like a moralist. The danger is real, and children must be warned. Watch out for the baobabs, he says plainly. He worked hard on this drawing, more than any other. It's not perfect, but it was born from urgency, and that makes it powerful. Chapter 6. The Sunset Ritual. Little by little, the narrator begins to understand the quiet sadness that lives inside the little prince. On the 4th morning, a tender detail emerges. "I am very fond of sunsets," the prince says. "Come, let us go look at one now." But the narrator gently reminds him, "We must wait, it's not time yet." The prince is surprised. He laughs softly and says, "I always forget I'm not at home." On his tiny planet, things are different. There, he can watch the sunset whenever he likes, just by moving his chair a few steps. No waiting, no distance. One day, he tells the narrator, "I saw the sunset 44 times. Later, he adds quietly, "You know, one loves the sunset when one is sad." The narrator asks, "Were you very sad that day?" But the little prince doesn't answer. His silence speaks louder than words. Chapter 7. The Secret of the Flower. On the 5th day, the little prince reveals something deeper, again thanks to the sheep. He asks suddenly, "If a sheep eats bushes, does it eat flowers too?" The narrator replies, A sheep eats whatever it finds. Even flowers with thorns? Yes, even those. Then comes the question that lingers. So, what are thorns for? The narrator, distracted by a stubborn bolt in his broken engine and worried about his dwindling water supply, answers impatiently. Thorns are useless. Flowers grow them out of spite. The prince is stunned. I don't believe you, he says, hurt. Flowers are fragile. They protect themselves the best they can. They think their thorns are fierce weapons. The narrator, still focused on his repairs, snaps. I'm busy with serious matters. The little prince stares at him, shocked. Serious matters? He sees the narrator covered in grease, hammer in hand, bent over a lifeless machine. You sound just like the grown-ups. He grows angry. You confuse everything. You mix things up. He speaks of a red-faced man on another planet, someone who never smelled a flower, never looked at a star, never loved anyone. All he does is count numbers and call them important. But he's not a man, the prince says. He's a mushroom. His voice rises with emotion. Flowers have grown thorns for millions of years. Sheep have eaten them just the same. Isn't it important to understand why flowers try so hard to protect themselves? Isn't the battle between sheep and flowers more serious than a businessman's sums? Then he speaks of one flower, his flower. If someone loves a flower that grows on just one planet among millions of stars, that's enough to make him happy. He can look at the stars and know, somewhere my flower is there. But if a sheep eats that flower, all the stars go dark. He falls silent, overcome with grief. His words dissolve into sobs. The narrator drops his tools. His worries, his engine, his thirst, even death fade away. There is only one thing that matters now, comforting the little prince. He holds him gently and whispers, "Your flower is safe. I'll draw a muzzle for your sheep. I'll draw a fence to protect your flower." But he doesn't know what else to say. He feels clumsy, unsure how to reach the boy's heart again, because the land of tears is a place too secret to enter easily. Chapter 8. The Arrival of the Rose. The little prince's planet, though small, was full of quiet mysteries. Among them was a flower, unlike any other. She appeared slowly, shyly, preparing herself with great care. Hidden inside her bud, she took her time to bloom, choosing her moment with elegance. And when she finally opened, she dazzled the prince. She was beautiful, proud, fragile, and very complicated. At first, the prince was enchanted. He watched her with wonder. But soon, her vanity began to show. She spoke in riddles, asked for things, and made subtle demands. She coughed to get attention. She claimed to be delicate, yet insisted she didn't fear tigers, though she had no claws. The prince was confused. He didn't understand her contradictions. He wanted to care for her, but her pride and his innocence clashed. He took her words too seriously, and she misunderstood his silence. Though she never said it, she loved him. And though he never said it, he loved her too. But love, when unspoken, can feel like distance. So the prince decided to leave. He cleaned out his volcanoes, pulled up the last baobab sprouts, and watered the flower one last time. She said softly, "I was foolish. Forgive me. Try to be happy." No reproach, no tears, just a quiet goodbye. She didn't want him to see her cry. She was a rose, after all. And so, with a heart full of questions and a longing he didn't yet understand, the little prince set off to explore the universe.